Hi everyone, it's Laura here, and today I'm back to share with you a card that I created with stamps by LDRS Creative and a few tips to create a beautiful but very easy Northern Lights look on your sky backgrounds. On my desk I have some watercolor cardstock cut to roughly 4 by 4 inches, and I'm going to start creating my background. I just measured how far I wanted my hues to go because there will be some snowy hues on my little scene, and then I started blocking in the areas where I want my northern lights to be. I'm using some water-based markers, and I started by using some yellow-green markers for my northern lights. And then I'm basically going to fill in the sky starting with a light blue marker just right around those areas where I have the northern lights. And then I'm going to fill in the rest with progressively darker markers. As you can see, I'm basically scribbling some color on, trying to blend the areas together a little bit, but I'm not too concerned about having harsh lines at this point. You will see how we will fix everything at the very end. And I warn you, this will look very ugly up until that point actually. So bear with me, because in the end we will have a northern light watercolor sky that looks really great, but that didn't take a lot of effort at all. I went back there with a second blue marker, and again I blended the marker with the green one that I already have on my paper, and now I am going back in with a much deeper blue. This is a navy blue marker, and I'm almost filling in the entire sky. I'm going back in with that lighter blue marker that I had before to blend everything together. Again, not worrying at all about having nice shapes or smooth blends, as you can probably tell. And the last marker that I brought in to really darken up the sky is a black marker. And I agree that this doesn't look like a piece of art at all, but I will now fix everything with my spray bottle. So I'm going to spritz the entire panel with some water. I want all the areas to be wet, but I don't want puddles because I still want to retain some definition. I don't want the colors to completely mix with each other. But because we added some water on our background, the different areas will blend with each other and we will get a more organic look that will give this watercolor-like impression. While my sky background was decided to dry, I die cut some more watercolor cardstock with the Over the Hues die set by LDRS Creative, and I added some quick shading by scribbling one of my watercolor markers on my glass mat, diluting the pigment with some water, and then using a paintbrush to create a bit of a gradient on those die-cut hues. And once that was ready too, I started working on my images. These ones are part of the LDRS Creative Otterly Lovable stamp set, and I'm stamping them on some smooth white cardstock using the LDRS Creative Raven Black ink. This is a hybrid ink and the ink pad is very juicy, so I'm just lightly dabbing the ink pad on my stamps, and then I'm closing the lid of my stamp positioning tool so that I can transfer the stamped image onto my paper. For my coloring, I decided to use alcohol markers and I did some pretty quick coloring. I added some shading to the igloo with some light blue markers that I then blended out with my colorless blender. I am basically adding some shading to the individual bricks by adding my color to the right and the bottom corner of each of the bricks. I'm blending it out with a lighter blue marker, and then, as I said, I'm going to use my colorless blender to blend them out towards white. For my otters, I'm using some warm grays and I'm shading them again by adding the darkest shadows on the right portion of the images and then blending them out towards the highlights, first with a mid-tone color and then with my highlight marker. I'm also going to pay attention to cast shadows. This will be, for example, under the otters' heads, under their arms, or anywhere two otters hug each other, so they touch each other. The one that's in the back will have a shadow cast by the one that's in the front. For the otter in the center, which is the parent in this scene, at least in my imagination, I decided to use again some warm gray markers, but I'm going one shade darker. And this is because this way I will bring some color variation in this image, and I will also sort of differentiate the adult otter from the kids. To bring in a pop of color, I used some bright pinks to color in the scarf. Again, using 3 markers, going from darkest to lightest. And once I was done coloring, I used the coordinating dies to the LDRS Creative Otterly Lovable stamp set to die cut out all the images. At this point, my sky background was completely dry, and to complete it, I decided to add a few stars with my metallic watercolors. So I activated the watercolors with some water, and then I used a paintbrush to create the stars themselves. I set the panel aside to dry, and in the meantime I die cut some black cardstock with the Scalloped circle frame die set by LDRS Creative. I used first the largest die, which is the scalloped die, to die cut the cardstock, and then I used the second largest die to die cut a circle out of the center so that I am left with a black frame. I used that largest scalloped die to also die cut my sky background and the hues, and then I adhered everything together to create the focal panel on my card. I'm also going to go ahead and adhere the igloo behind one of the hues. I'm using some liquid adhesive so that I have enough time to position everything correctly. And then before going ahead and gluing down my otters too, I created my card base. I cut some black cardstock to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and then I cut the same watercolor cardstock that I used for the hues and the sky to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 inches. I layered them together so that I have a 1/16 of an inch border all around my white panel, and then I adhered first the focal point with the night scene to the card base, and then I also adhered my otters, slightly offsetting them with respect to the circle frame to add some extra interest to the card. I stamped one of the sentiments from the Utterly Adorable stamp set using, again, Raven Black ink by LDRS Creative. And then for some finishing touches, I used my white gel pen to add a few highlights and some dots on the otter's cheeks. I added the highlights to the scarf too. And then I adhered everything to a top folding A2 card base cut at 4 1/4 by 11 inches and scored at 5.5 inches, and that finished off my card for today. And here you can see the final result. I think the sky turned out really great. It looks like I put a lot of effort in making it, but as you saw, it was actually pretty easy to make. Make sure to try this technique out and to tag me on social media if you share your works, because I would like to see your interpretation of this technique. And that's it for today. If you guys enjoyed this video, you can let me know by giving it a thumbs up and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. And if you're new to my channel, you can consider subscribing for more card making and paper crafting inspiration. As always, thank you all so much for stopping by and have a great day.